Hello everyone and welcome to the American Civil War Gaming Club's YouTube channel. This is A Game and a Chair. My name is Blake and I'm the host here on this show. If you have any questions or want to find out more about our club, you can go to acwgc.net and you'll find a lot of information there. We are always looking for new members. Alright, in today's episode, this is another top picks episode. And in this one, I'm going to pick my top 3 brigades to command in the WDS series. Now there are 15 different games and there are hundreds of brigades to consider when making this list. And it really wasn't an easy thing to do, but it really was a lot of fun. I'll talk more about that later. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to pick my top 6 brigades from the WDS series. And then I'm going to pick my top 3 from that list at the very end. So you're probably wondering, well, how am I going to judge which brigades are the best to command? And, that's a really good question because I struggled with this myself, trying to figure out what criteria I was going to use exactly. Well, right off the bat, I'm only going to do infantry regiments. I'm not going to take into consideration cavalry, or if a brigade has artillery attached to it, I'm not going to factor in the artillery with the brigade. So this is strictly infantry. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the quality of the regiments in the brigade. And I'm going to compare and contrast their quality not just with their own armies, but with their opponent's army. And I think that's important because if a brigade is a really outstanding brigade, they should be head and shoulders above not just their own army, but their opponents. Another thing I'm going to look at is the size of the brigade. If you have 500 men in the brigade and they're all rated A, that's great. Unfortunately, they could probably be overmatched by just an average brigade if it's 2 or 3 times their size. So I'm going to look at the size of the brigade and take that into account. The commanders, because they do play a role here. If you have a brigade with really good regiments, but the commander is trash, well then that's going to hurt you. And I'm not going to really put them on this top list for that reason. And the last way that I'm going to judge this is by isolating the brigade to the battle itself. I'm going to look at the brigade within the context of the battle it's fighting in. They need to stand out in that battle in every way in order to be on this list. So there is my answer. I'm going to judge it using the quality of the regiments, the size of the brigade, the commander of the brigade, and I'm going to look at how that brigade fits into the battle itself that it is fighting in. How that brigade compares to the enemy brigades, but also to the brigades on its own side. Does the brigade stand out in its particular battle? Is it just the brigade that you fear the most when you play a certain game? And if it is that brigade, it's going to make this list. Alright, so let's go ahead and get started here. And the first place we're going to go to is Campaign Gettysburg. Now you might be thinking, the Stonewall Brigade. That is a very solid brigade, right? Yeah, it really is a nice brigade. But the Iron Brigade is better. It has more units and more men. And you know what? If you put them up against each other, I'm going to take the Iron Brigade. Meredith is a better commander, and there's more men, they have more units, there's really no comparison. And so the Stonewall Brigade at the Battle of Gettysburg, you know what? It just doesn't make the list. And if you aren't even the best brigade in the battle, you can't be on this list. So you know what? The Iron Brigade from Campaign Gettysburg and the Battle of Gettysburg is on my top 6 list. The Iron Brigade at the Battle of Gettysburg has 1,814 men, and that makes them 15% larger than the average rebel brigade at the Battle of Gettysburg. They are also 1.5 grades better than the average rebel brigade at Gettysburg. It is a 4.41 average for the Confederates there, which is rated C, versus a 6 for the Iron Brigade, which is of course the highest rating you can have, and that is an A. Furthermore, they have 1 additional regiment than the average brigade at Gettysburg, and I think the Iron Brigade is really just a top-notch brigade not just at the Battle of Gettysburg, but really in the WDS series. So they are going to be one of my 6 on the list here for my top 3 overall. Up next, from Campaign Antietam, and actually from the first Battle of Bull Run, it is the Stonewall Brigade. They didn't make the cut at Gettysburg, but they do here. They have 2,505 men in this brigade, and while that is only 7% larger than the average Union brigade, their quality does make them a grade and a half better than the average Union brigade. At this battle, the average Union brigade is at 3.41, which is rated a D, versus the rating of 5 for the Stonewall Brigade at the Battle of First Bull Run. Not only that, but it is led by Stonewall Jackson. You have to take that into account. He is a solid commander with a BB rating. One more thing about the Stonewall Brigade at the Battle of First Bull Run is that they have muskets. And at close range, which our games often are fought at, that is a devastating gun. Because of all these reasons, I have to put the Stonewall Brigade at First Bull Run on my list of the top 6 brigades to command, and it's definitely going to be up there for contention with the top 3. Alright, next, let's return to Campaign Antietam, because there's a brigade I think probably a lot of people overlook. Hancocks Brigade, from the Battle of Antietam itself. Now, while you look at this brigade, it might not seem all that intimidating, but it really is. So let's compare it. It has 2,777 men, and remember the criteria I'm using to grade these, right? Quality, size, and then in comparison to their enemy. Well, this brigade is 3.5 times larger than the average Confederate brigade at the Battle of Antietam. I mean, they're larger than 2 rebel divisions in this battle. I'm talking about Hood's division and Jackson's division. Both have fewer men than this one brigade. That's nuts. They are a half grade better than the average Union brigade at the Battle of Antietam. The average Federal brigade there is a 3.61, whereas Hancock's brigade is a 4.23, which is rated pretty much a solid C. They're also led by Hancock, who is a very good commander. He has high ratings in this battle, and overall, this brigade is a juggernaut at the Battle of Antietam, and because of that, Hancock's brigade has to be included on this list. They're just a very scary brigade whenever you see them at the Battle of Antietam. So they're on my top 6 list. Alright, now let's go to Campaign Peninsula, and specifically the 7 Days Campaign. And from that campaign, John Bell Hood's Texas Brigade. This brigade is a beast, just an absolute beast in these games. There are 2,969 men within the Texas Brigade. That makes them 18% larger than the average Union brigade during the 7 Days Campaign. And not only are they 18% larger, they are a grade and a half better than the average Union brigade. That is a 3.41 average for the Federals, which is a D rating, versus a 5 rating for the Texas Brigade, which is a B rating. And they are led by John Bell Hood, who is an exceptional commander in this battle. And I mean, when you put all that together, you have to put them on this list. So the Texas Brigade, there they are. Up next, from Campaign Chickamauga, you might not see this one coming. Hazens Brigade. Doesn't really look that intimidating, right? Well, that's because I left off half the brigade. There you go. So, from the Battle of Chattanooga, Hazens Brigade. They have 2,908 men, and that makes them 2.5 times larger than the average rebel brigade, not just in pure size, but also in units. So they are a large brigade, they have good quality, they have lots of units, and they have a lot of men. And they're a higher grade overall than the average rebel units in this game. The rating for Hazens Brigade is a 4.97, which is practically a B rating, whereas for the Confederates, their overall infantry rating is a 4.55, which is a C rating. And they're led by William Hazen, who in this battle is highly rated. And so, although it might seem kind of like a random selection, if you're fighting at the Battle of Chattanooga, you really do not want to run into Hazens Brigade. They are large, they are well trained, and there's just a lot of units. So they have made my list for the top 6 brigades in this game. Alright, I've got one more here to go, and I went to Campaign Corinth for that one. Specifically, the Battle of Corinth itself, where you'll find the Missouri Brigade. And this brigade has 1,970 men, so it's pretty darn large. In fact, they're 25% larger than the average Union brigade in this battle. And they are 1.77 grade higher than the average Union brigade. The average Union brigade is 4.05, which is a C rating, whereas the Missouri Brigade is rated 5.82, which is a B+, practically an A rating. So there's a huge difference here between the average Union Brigade and the Missouri Brigade, which is just head and shoulders above their opponents. It is commanded by Elijah Gates, who, while not really a big name in the Civil War, in this particular battle is rated highly, and just makes this brigade that much better. Alright, well then there you have it. Those are my 6 top brigades to command in the WDS series. And yeah, some of them you might not be expecting, and you might be wondering why others aren't on this list. Believe me, it was not easy to come up with this list. And if you think I didn't do my homework, trust me, I did. I had a lot of fun making this list. And I couldn't even stop here. I have to do an honorable mention page, just because there were so many other brigades that could have made this list. For instance, the Kentucky Brigade, the Orphan Brigade, at the Battle of Murfreesboro. It has some very solid units. It's rated highly. Unfortunately, it just didn't make this list. It could very easily be on the top 6 list, but it's just a little bit smaller, and they do have that large C-rated regiment. Still, they are right there. If there was a number 7 spot, it'd probably be the Orphan Brigade here. Also, Crocker's Brigade from the Battle of Corinth. I mean, this is a very scary brigade. It's large in number, it has high quality, but it's just not even the best brigade at the Battle of Corinth. That would be Gates's brigade, which did make the top 6 list. So if you aren't the best brigade in your battle, you can't be on the top 6 list. Crocker, sorry buddy, you have a great brigade, but if you put them head to head against the Missouri Brigade of Gates, I'm taking the Missouri Brigade. You have Daniel's Brigade from the Battle of Gettysburg, and I mean, this is a hard one. This is really a hard one. I had so much fun debating these with myself, and I'm still debating them a little bit because Daniel's Brigade is no joke. They have 5 good-sized regiments. They are rated B, but I just feel like if you put them in a head-to-head battle with the Iron Brigade would win. But it'd be very, very close. But I just can't do it. So Daniel's Brigade does not make the top 6 list. John Gordon's Brigade from the Battle of the Wilderness. This brigade is large, and they are very highly rated. So why aren't they on my top 6 list? Well, to be honest, the Battle of the Wilderness, and really the entire Overland Campaign, really inflates Confederate ratings, and I'm just not comfortable putting him on that top 6 list for that reason. I just feel like it's a little artificial. But Gordon's brigade, they deserve these ratings. It was one of the best brigades in the Confederate Army, but it's just cheapened when it happens at the Battle of the Wilderness, unfortunately, because Gordon's brigade isn't even the highest rated in the Confederate Army. So how can I put them on that top 6 list? I just can't. Sorry. Alright, the last honorable mention is Stevenson's Brigade from Champion Hill. A really solid brigade. There's no other way to say it. This has another argument. They could be in that top 6 list, but I had to draw the line somewhere. They just didn't stand out quite enough in the Battle of Champion Hill for me. The Confederates have some solid brigades also. They just don't make the top list. As I said, you could make a compelling argument for any of these to be on that top 6 list. And even looking at it now, I'm like, man, maybe I should have put that brigade on there. But you know what? I'm going to stick with the ones I've got. I'm going to stick with these 6 brigades because in their particular battles, they really stand out above their opponents. So now, here comes the hardest part. I have to choose 3 of these to be my top 3. All right, well, let's start by eliminating 3. And in no particular order, because that would be way too hard, I'm just going to eliminate 3. And the one I'm going to eliminate first is Hazens Brigade. And that's tough. I mean, they have a large brigade. They are twice as big as their opponents in both size and number of regiments. They are good quality, but they just don't stand out enough in that quality category. And it's also at the Battle of Chattanooga, where there's not a lot of open field fighting, so I just can't put them in that top 3. They make the top 6, but not the top 3, so unfortunately, Hazens Brigade, they're gone. All right, the next one probably will surprise some people, and I'm going to get some pushback on it, but I have to do it. The Iron Brigade. You know what? It's painful to do, but I was already arguing with myself, are they better than Daniel's Brigade? And if I have to have that argument, they can't be on this list. They have to be definitively the best brigade in the battle. And the Iron Brigade has an argument, but Daniel's Brigade is very, very good at the Battle of Gettysburg, so I have to eliminate the Iron Brigade. All right, well then that means I have to eliminate one of these 4 brigades. It's getting harder, but I'm just going to have to go with my gut here and take away the Missouri Brigade. I mean, do I have a reason at this point? I'm just splitting hairs. But I would say the Missouri Brigade, while it is an excellent brigade, they're fighting at the Battle of Corinth. So they're kind of wasted there because they're just throwing themselves up against enemy entrenchments. And yeah, that's not a great reason, but like I said, I'm really trying to nitpick here, so I just have to eliminate the Missouri Brigade. Sorry, boys, you're off the list. All right, well, that leaves me with these 3 brigades, and from these, I have to choose numbers 1, 2, and 3. That is simply not easy, but I've got to make a decision, and I'm going to remove some of the drama right now. I'm just going to take away Hancocks Brigade. I mean, they're definitively the scariest brigade at the Battle of Antietam. Unfortunately, they don't arrive in the fighting itself for a number of hours. And I've played Antietam a number of times, and although Hancock does eventually reach the battlefield, it's usually too late and the fighting has already been decided. Maybe that's not a great reason to rank them number 3, but that's where I'm going to put them, because they just don't seem to sway the outcome of the battle enough. So yeah, I just got to put them as number 3. So Hancocks Brigade, poof, you're gone. And that leaves me with the Stonewall Brigade and the Texas Brigade. You might be thinking, well, gee, we might as well just start it here because those are the 2 most famous brigades in the Confederate Army of Northern Virginia. And yeah, they are. But there was some tough competition to reach these top 2 spots. And now we have to decide between them. And that's even going to be harder. And you might be thinking, well, the Stonewall Brigade at First Bull Run and the Texas Brigade in the 7 Days, I mean, how do you decide between the 2? And that's a really good question. So let's do some comparison here, and let's just see how they match up against each other, right? So the Stonewall Brigade is 7% larger than the average Union Brigade at First Bull Run, but the Texas Brigade is 18% larger than the average Union Brigade in the 7 Days. So when you compare them like that, the Texas Brigade comes out ahead. They get that check mark. Up next, I'm going to look at their average quality in comparison to the Union side. And in both cases, they are a grade and a half better than the average Union Brigade. So really, it's a push there. I'm not going to give either side the check mark. Another thing that we can look at is how large their brigade is in relation to their own army. What percentage of their army do they represent? And if you do that, well, then the Stonewall Brigade counts for 9.5% of the rebel infantry at the Battle of First Bull Run, whereas the Texas Brigade accounts for just 2.9% of the rebel infantry in the 7 Days campaign. So if you really look at it like that, the Stonewall Brigade is really crucial to the Confederate Army at First Bull Run, whereas the Texas Brigade, they only account for 3% of the rebel infantry in the 7 Days campaign. So I think if you look at it like that, you have to give this point to the Stonewall Brigade. Now let's look at the infantry leaders. Stonewall Jackson versus John Bell Hood. In real life, you're choosing Stonewall Jackson, but when you compare these two, John Bell Hood is rated higher. So you have to give the check mark to the Texas Brigade. Now, here's something that I'm just going to throw in there. Historical importance. And I kind of touched on this before, but you just don't win at First Bull Run without the Stonewall Brigade. I don't think that's even arguable. Whereas the Texas Brigade in the 7 Days campaign, you'd probably still win that campaign even if they aren't there. So I have to give the check mark over to the Stonewall Brigade. And really, what have I accomplished now? Nothing. I'm right back where I started. I don't know what to choose here. Well, what do you think? Would you choose the Stonewall Brigade at First Bull Run, or are you choosing the Texas Brigade in the 7 Days campaign? And I thought about just ending this video right here on a cliffhanger, kind of like The Sopranos. Just, you can choose your own ending. The music stops, and we just, fade to black. But I'm not going to do that. I'm going to force myself to choose, and I'm going to go with the Stonewall Brigade. I have to choose them. If you look at the Battle of First Bull Run in the WDS game, they are the scariest brigade in that battle by far. And I think in any of the WDS games, it is very arguable that that single brigade is the one that changes the complexion more than any other brigade in any other scenario. They are just a beast in the Battle of First Bull Run in the WDS game. So I have to put them as the best brigade to command in the entire WDS series because of that factor. It's that simple. So I just have to give second place to the Texas Brigade in the 7 Days campaign, and I'll give third place to Hancocks Brigade at the Battle of Antietam. Alright, well, what do you guys think? Am I right here? Would you put some other brigade as the top brigade to command in a WDS series? Do you like my way of rating them? Do you not like it? Put your comments down below. I'm curious what you think. I will say that by far, this was probably the most fun I've had putting together a top pick list. It was challenging to figure out how to rate these things, how to compare one brigade to another brigade. This was, as I said, just a lot of fun to do. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you did enjoy it, as always, be sure to like this video. I always appreciate it. And if you have any comments, as mentioned, put them down below. You can also subscribe. If you subscribe, you'll get notifications when future videos drop, and you can stay up to date on all things with a game and a chair. Alright, well, I do appreciate you guys watching, and until next time, just keep gaming.